This is the JWN podcast. My guest today is the creative director and founder of VeraNation.com, where music and storytelling collide. Moreover, providing clients with technical writing services and advocating for North Koreans' rights, which is where our conversation begins. So without further ado, please welcome Abby Duran. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
This is an odd occurrence as far as you're somebody I've known, but do I really know you? Do you really know me?
I don't think so.
We really don't know each other. Isn't that sad how far you go through your life with people that you feel comfortable around, you've spent plenty of time with in group settings or at events, but you don't know anything about them really?
Well, the best part is that we have Shonda in common.
Well,
and
yeah.
I met the most amazing people through Shonda, so in the end it works out.
Well, there's something to be said about a person. So Shonda is a friend of ours that we have in common, and she's kind of one of those magnetic personalities that brings people together. And throughout her life, she'll just find people, and she's just so. And I don't know. I don't know. I don't think she was ever always. She wasn't always like this person. But she just became completely outgoing and like inviting to other people and bringing people together. She would always get these get-togethers to get everyone to socialize and hang out. And we'd hang out at a brewery or something and just have this random group of people.
She was always, I think I've met her at least for 10 years now. I want to say at least.
Wow.
And so she was really the kind of homebody, kind of quiet, a little mousy, but super sweet.
Mousy.
And so there was an occasion where I went out and I forgot my ID. And so I just put my hair down and we look similar wearing glasses. So I used her ID and it worked.
Nice.
But then after some time, she was focusing on herself, and now she's the beautiful social butterfly that she is today.
Well, and she's, through life circumstances, changed her trajectory and her outlook, and for the benefit of all of us. It's an example of like improving yourself and how it affects other people. Because now I get to sit here and talk to Abby about her. When I said, hey, why don't you come on the podcast? You were kind of like, really? But you are a creative person, and you're somebody like me who's interested in talking about creative things, about experiencing different forms of art. So we definitely have a lot of things in common. And then I had no idea, because now I'm like, all right, let me check out VeraNation.com, which is your blog, right?
Yes, it is.
And I didn't know you were blogging. For one thing, this is how brain dead I am. And then so I'm looking through that, and then I'm looking through the things you do, and I'm like, oh, I didn't even. So are you originally your family from North Korea or just Korea in general?
No, actually, I am not of Asian descent.
You're not I didn't think so. But then you had all this stuff on your website about giving presentations about the North Korean.
So that started from, that's another rabbit hole we can get down. But
yeah, let's just start there and then we'll work our way out.
So about 2004, there was a beautiful documentary from BBC where they filmed the Mass Games, which is the biggest human spectacle in the world. And it's always in Pyongyang, North Korea.
The Masked Games.
Mass, M-A-S-S.
Oh, Mass Games. Okay.
So it's a combination of artistry, music, and visuals.
Okay.
And
I've never heard of this.
Yeah, it's quite incredible. They do it mostly every year. Just depends on what they got going on. So these two BBC directors were able to film these two girls training for the gymnastics portion, which is a sport I love. So I was immediately hooked. And they followed these girls through what it's like to live in the capital of North Korea. And they are the cream of the crop of the nation. When you live in the capital, you cannot go and relocate. The government tells you where to live, and So,
District 1, basically.
Yeah, District 1, yes. I'm sure there's 12 other districts in there. So it was a really beautiful representation, and they did it in a way where it didn't offend anybody. It won some awards, and then I was so captivated by the story and history of North Korea, so I started studying on my own. And my best friend from high school taught English in South Korea.
Uh-huh.
So I spent a spring break there, and I got to go to the border.
Wow.
And then for $90 more, you could cross over the border into this little like rundown town that looks like the Soviet just collapsed.
Oh my goodness.
And it was like terrifying, but at the same time, I was in awe because you literally sign a waiver that you're crossing the border. And
anything can happen. Yeah.
Anything can happen, and they tell you what not to take photos of. But it literally you can feel the oppression just looking out, and you see the North Korean flag. And there's people that live in the village, but they don't get to talk with you. They're working. They have their own little school.
They just keep it themselves.
They do. And you can really, really feel that. But I heard the beer is amazing.
It better be. If this beer isn't good.
So they served us lunch, and they offered us Korean beer.
Oh, wow.
North Korean beer.
So that basically got you really hooked.
They got me hooked. And then when I came back to the States, I found there was a group. They're based out of LA and Seoul. They are called Liberty in North Korea, and they rescue and rehabilitate North Koreans. And they've been doing this for quite some time. So I got in contact with them. I've been able to bring people to come speak in Charleston and just work with them. And I'm one of their sponsors now.
Wow. Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Because you really just don't think much of it. You understand that these people are living in an oppressed society, but at the same time, you always wonder, it's one of those things like, are we being like hero syndrome white people? Are they truly oppressed? According to our standards, they are. Do they feel that way? Are they happy with that way of lifestyle? Like, I don't even know.
Well, there's a very common thread. I read 90% of the biographies from North Korea and some history books. So I've definitely know more than the average. And I've got to speak with one lady who defected. And they don't really understand freedom. They don't know what civil rights is, let alone something like animal rights. That's unheard of. They don't understand, like, there's no term for the internet. They don't have internet. They have computers, but they don't get to access the other side.
Their network is only landlocked to their region, basically, to North Korea.
But they're also human. I mean, they have families, they fall in love, they do those normal things. But the common thread I read is that they just kind of feel terrible for not understanding where they come from. So when they go to another country, South Korea, United States, whatever, it's almost too much for them, for some of them.
I mean, I can imagine. It'd be like if you traveled into the future 20 years from right now and you had to just and you didn't understand anything that was going on around you. So all the references aren't there. And
their trust level is really, really low, of course. So it's like, how do you know these people aren't spies? Or, so especially when COVID hit, it was hard for the people that just got newly integrated. Because if you go and you can't just knock on their door like you would a neighbor. They get a little, standoffish and think, are they coming for me? Is my family okay? And a lot of these people, I think a good, maybe 5%, their whole family makes it out. Maybe, if they're lucky.
Wow.
So
5%.
Maybe. I could be wrong on that stat.
It's unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
That's unbelievable that I think sometimes I romanticize that kind of that Amish type thing, but at least they're given the opportunity. They're given that little window when they come of age to go explore the world and see what it's about and choose whether or not they want to pursue an Amish lifestyle or just.
And they also get to eat.
Yeah, and they yeah, but there's something that commune style not communist, but I guess it is, of just, having,
Community.
yeah, just having this set like lifestyle just laid out in front of you. It sounds awful, but also at times it sounds amazing. I think it's like the grass is always greener syndrome. Like whatever you're doing in life, if you're working at a certain position at a job, you might look at someone else in their position and be like, oh, if I only had that, I'd be so much happier. And they're probably thinking the same thing about you. Oh, it was so much easier when I did that job. Now I have all this other pressure that I wasn't prepared for. And so I think what happens, like if you're an entrepreneur, when you go out on your own, start your own business, all the pressure's on your shoulders. You have to learn all these skills that you wouldn't normally have to even be aware of as an employee. When you're an employer, you've got a whole set of responsibilities on top of everything else that you had to do as an employee. So you honestly fantasize about going to work for somebody. And it's true on the other side. When you're working for somebody, you're like, oh, I wish I was the boss. I wish I was the one making these decisions. I wish, you know what I'm saying? I think we all kind of do that. But in their case, I don't know. It sounds to me from what you're saying that they must be somewhat aware that something's not right.
Most of them are. There is. But there's also, you have to understand, they have a level of propaganda that is that's no longer existent in the Western world.
What do you mean no longer existent?
But
70 something million people.
Well, what I mean by brainwashed
sorry. I had to do it.
Yes. And I get it. I totally get it. But they have one television channel. They have a volume in their house for like the radio comes in and they can't turn it off, but they can turn the volume down.
What? Oh God! So it's like that Black Mirror. Do you ever watch Black Mirror?
I've seen some episodes.
There's an episode where people are like human, like power energy source, and like their lifestyle, like they have to consume media. So like in their bedroom, every screen is a wall.
Oh, it's like 1980.
I mean, every wall is a screen. I'm sorry. 1984.
Yeah, kind of like that, or the one about the book burning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's the thing. They have to. They can't turn it off. And if they close their eyes or cover their ears, they'll like an alarm will go off.
Oh my God.
You know what I'm saying? Like you have to consume this commercial in order to eat or whatever. Like it's, and you could see like we're on the cusp of that. We're so used to just turning on a YouTube video and getting an ad force fed to you, and that you have a certain amount of seconds before you can skip it.
But you can also turn it off, or you can just not watch it, or and it's okay.
Right.
But
you have the choice to turn it off.
Exactly. Over there, they don't have a choice.
Right.
But they do have an amazing black market, and and I say it's amazing because it's not just goods and services. That's where they get the outside information. So like a USB port they smuggle in those so they can watch movies and like English or Korean movies, even though it's absolutely forbidden and the penalty is usually death.
Wow. So if you're caught with like a copy of Borat on a USB stick, you can die.
Yeah, they've actually, a lot of the stories I've heard, one girl in particular, Yumin Park, she now resides in Chicago. And she's been the most active vocalist about her country. And she's got a whole YouTube channel about North Korea. So if you want to learn more, you can go to her.
But you have to skip the ads.
Yes. But she was saying that she snuck over, she got a copy of Titanic, the movie. And she was
so offensive.
She was mortified that DiCaprio got decapitated because he made a movie about love, which they don't do in North Korea.
What?
Yes.
Okay.
She was
it was
so
a movie
worried
about love, and
she was worried that he was going to get executed because
he fell in love.
Yeah.
Wow, that is pretty intense. But she was aware before she came. She knew there was a problem. Like I guess through this black market, they get drips of information and people talk.
If you can get to the black market, but there's also like she was. I wouldn't say fortunate, but she was able to live on the river, which divides North Korea and China. So she could see the lights on the other side, and
she knew something was going on.
She could see like why do they have at least question it in her mind. But that's the other thing. There, you have to be careful about who you talk to, your neighbors, your family, because they can rat you out.
They get paid for ratting you out, don't they? Don't they get like
Not always.
Oh.
And in fact, here's the most messed up thing about North Korea, if that's even a saying. So, say for example, she got caught watching that movie, which she had to like do it underneath covers and like no lights in the house, nothing.
Right.
And so, say she gets caught. Well, 3 generations of her family will go to prison. Wow. 3 generations.
Wait, I remember hearing something about like the way they rat each other out, for lack of a better term, but the way that isn't there, it's like you have to have like information that you have to report, like there's a quota.
In school they have a curriculum, I forgot what they call it, but they literally have a session from when they're little on up to where each person stands in front of the class and they criticize you, and everybody gets their turn on criticizing them and how to be a better citizen, quote. So it's just kind of ingrained. It's this like sick.
Who besides Kim Jong-un, right? Who benefits from this? Does the whole country benefit from this kind of thing? Or is it just a top-down thing where only he benefits? It's just to keep him in power or his family in power?
Yeah, so they're considered, the Kim dynasty is considered like immortal, even though
they die.
Yes. But again, it comes from this ingrained propaganda that they've living in, and even if they don't agree with it, they can't say anything or do anything about it. But he, the very little funding and the aid that they do get, obviously he reaps the rewards in making nuclear weapons and showcasing stuff, not actually like going towards any economy. They have the grounds for a good economy. They just don't use it.
Well, obviously, like South Korea is amazing. So it's an odd thing. Where I was going with that, though, is do you think if you cut the head off the snake, would it change? Is it that consolidated the power, or are there other people that would just jump into?
There would be other people.
Like if you took the whole Kim family out. I mean, that sounds awful to say, to wish that.
Well, he's kind of halfway there. He kind of killed some of
his own relatives off.
And there was hope when he got into power that since he was younger, he was going to bring something to the nation, and he just went crazy. But I've heard, and from other reports, that his sister, she's kind of next in line. I heard that she's worse than him. So I'm not sure where the line's drawn or where there'll be any change or what's going to happen. That's
so, but then how do you feel about, say, another country coming in and doing a regime change? How do you feel about that? Do you think that would, that is a solution, or do you think that would just cause more problems, create a vacuum, that type of thing that we have historically done?
That's tough.
You didn't know we'd be getting all sorts of political about North Korean policies.
Yeah, everyone's going to be like, I thought we were going to talk about music.
No, we are.
No, I think one, it would have to depend on the country and how they do it. I mean, you really can't just bust in through North Korea.
Right.
Number 2, they do have nuclear weapons, and even though they shoot them off towards Japan and the South, they've been claiming to do a war with the world forever, and everyone goes about their daily business. Even in Seoul, like they were just like, oh, that's normal. We get an alarm every week, and there's no point in concerning people about it because nothing really happens. They still find tunnels and they still find things here and there, but they don't create a panic with the South Korean people because it's just kind of,
Yeah, it would suck up all the air in the room, so to speak.
But I don't, diplomatically, it would be ideal, but it's kind of hard to do that when, he signs one thing and does something completely different, which is normal.
Yeah.
So.
Well, from the culture standpoint, have you found in your I won't call it obsession. Well, is that fair to call it an obsession?
It's a hobby. Yeah, it's a hobby.
What kind of culture have you pulled from it? Is there any kind of poetry, music, fashion, anything that you've pulled from it that you're like, this is unique to this area?
As far as North Korea or South Korea or
North
both?
Korea.
Well, they do have a very different dialects. They, I'll have to say the Korean language is the easiest to learn for people who are illiterate because they have the shortest alphabet in the world. So they've made it, and they actually designed it that way so people who couldn't read and write could actually speak the language and etc. But the food's a little bit different from what I've heard. But they, coming from a non-Western standpoint, a lot of North Koreans do miss the kind of family and community base that we don't get a lot of here in the West.
Yeah.
So I think that's nice that they kind of reminisce on that.
Interesting. Well, I asked that basically to figure out there has to be something bubbling in there, that the underground type of scene you'd have to imagine. Like, you don't think it's there? Or do you think it's just so underground that it'll never see the light of day?
You mean in terms of culture or like...
Yeah, just
or
a rebellious...
revolution? Oh.
Yeah, revolutionary type of thing, like a punk rock, North Korean punk rock band.
Well,
like how out of Iran you had all of this culture, but they also they were very free and progressive, for lack, I would imagine progressive country until they became like a theocracy, basically. So, but they had those seeds were already there. I don't know what North Korea's history is like, but I wonder if,
it's hard to say that when you don't understand that you even have basic human rights.
Yeah.
So if they don't know that they have rights, how can they stand up for themselves?
Right.
And that's been the biggest question.
But even like slave culture...
But they're not exposed to the other world. Like, as slaves, and over time, they get to see the people benefiting from their work. They get to see the other side. North Korea doesn't get to see the other side. They're only being shown and spoken about what the government wants to tell them to see. And unless you cross the border, unless you have connections in it with the business or what have you, or been to China, and even then, it's still sketchy because China will report you and send you back.
Yeah.
No problem. Or they'll sell you off. Either one.
Wow.
So, and in most of those cases, like, they've had to cross through China and into the Mongolian desert, and that's where they gain their freedom. Just insane.
So, but the drive is in there for a lot of people.
They're starving. They're eating rats. They're eating each other. Like, there's been, I mean, like, when you literally went from, let's say you lived in Pyongyang and you had a good life, you worked for the state, or your kids are in school, things seem okay. You get food rations and you don't have to pay for rent or anything because the government provides it. And then someone down your family line that you may not even talk to, 3 generations,
got ratted out.
Exactly. And then it's like, and then you get thrown into a prison camp where they torture you, they beat you, and they work you till you maybe get a couple grains of rice, in some cases.
Wow. That's amazing. It's amazing that that exists, and the world is kind of in a position where we have to tolerate it. We just, it's scary. So I applaud you on that. But I love that in the same turn, like on your website, you're like, I'll do press releases for your band. Also, I'll give you a presentation about what's going on in North Korea. And I'm sitting there going like, you could see where I'm like, does she have family from North Korea? Like, where did
I actually
this
don't
come
even
from?
speak Korean. I only know 안녕하세요, which means hello, and that's all I remember.
Well, I'm so glad we got to talk about this because I was so confused. I was like, well, where did this come from? And now it seems like there's so many different areas of the world that are in some sort of plight as far as like against what we think is normal. And I guess the question always comes up back to what I said earlier is like, in that case, yes, they're starving. Obviously, there's something immensely wrong. There's people starving here too. And it's not nearly on the same scale. You can't even compare the two. But I wonder, do we look at that system that they're doing and we're like, oh my gosh, this is awful. They have no freedom. They have nothing. They don't even have food to eat. They're being imprisoned and enslaved basically. But who are we to do anything about it? Should we do anything about it? Can we do anything about it?
Yes, and yes.
There you
go. So, can we go over there and change their mind like we would like here? Ministries do? No.
Yeah.
But
dropping leaflets ain't gonna work.
No, and I understand why they did it, but it's not gonna work. So talking about it helps. Getting to know these people, the organization.
Right.
So understanding the education's key. Reading, writing. And not to say that I'm not, a feminist, but it kind of concerns me when everyone's like super pro-feminist here and that I'm like, you've got women being, forced at marriage at 10, 12 years old. You've got these women in North Korea. You've got all these other issues. And yeah, we have our own stuff to work out here, obviously, but this should be a global effort. Get the basic human rights down for everybody and then build up from there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess defining what those human rights are.
And informing these people that they actually have human rights and it's real. It's,
right.
That's the other thing.
That they're worth all of these rights and that they should feel that,
Yeah.
And maybe through music and art, that's the way to get through to them. I mean, think about I brought up slavery just because of all of the great music that was born from that. You know what I'm saying? And that was kind of the thing. That was like the messaging that carried them through. That was the faith, the strength, the part of the way to like really drive home like what they were feeling. They had this art form to lift them up and to carry them through. And so that's why I was wondering about, it's got to be there in some form. Maybe it's in a way we don't even recognize.
It is. They do prim these children. Like if they have any kind of quality talent, they automatically start them on their career path.
Wow.
So like you'll see like 6-year-olds tuning and playing a guitar in sync with 12 other kids. They very talented and they're very dedicated in that way, but they're groomed that way. But here's the other thing. They can't just go and create their own music.
Right.
It's all given to them and
state sponsored.
State sponsored. And so they have to create something that immortalizes and keeps that going, that morale going. But there are people who have left and been fortunate enough, and they're some of the most amazing, talented, painters and especially the painters. It's just like they really just capture what they went through and they showcase it in a way that the world can understand. Like, hey, it's not right, but I'm so drawn to it, I can't turn away.
Yeah.
So,
well, think about like go to any museum in America, in the world, in all of the classic paintings that are religious because that's all they were allowed to paint, right? I love looking at those paintings because I love looking for like little pieces of messaging. You know what I'm saying? Like little tiny things that would have gone undetected by maybe the religious leadership, but you can sit there and go like, oh, okay, they're communicating in a very subtle way, and I can feel it, or I can, you know what I'm saying? I'm getting certain things like these little tiny details, or just an expression on a face, that kind of thing, and I think through those seeds, even though they're being state sponsored on how to perform music and how to paint and all that stuff, I got to imagine that somebody is, even if it's subconsciously, is putting messaging in there. Do you think I'm wrong?
No, not at all. I mean, and I think that's the part of our amazing willness as humans. We have this internal drive that keeps us going in some sense.
Yeah, the tiny glimmer of hope.
Yes.
But I love art because it's a language that is universally spoken but not universally understood. You know what I'm saying? So like you can say something that sounds in black and white on paper as a positive statement, but the way you deliver it can make it all of a sudden seem like a completely desperate statement. Did you watch any of the inauguration of Joe Biden?
I did.
Did you watch Amanda Gorman,
I did.
the poet? If you take her poem and read it, it's powerful words, don't get me wrong. But if you take her poem and read it, it's one thing. When you watch her perform it in that situation on that day, it takes a whole different life.
It does. She expresses exactly how the words are supposed to be interpreted.
Yeah.
And not just you, like you said, you can read it, but hearing her speak it, and then you hear the nuance of the word itself.
And not just hearing her, watching her.
Oh, yeah.
The performance, she was almost dancing to it.
Yeah, you're right. And that's kind of why I put it on the weekly blast that I had. You know, I just want to relive. Whether people agree with their political choice or not, this was a well-deserved moment in time.
She stole the whole thing.
For this young lady to go up there and say, here's the view on the nation. Here's a bit of hope.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe in us.
Yeah. But I challenge anyone who thinks poetry is boring to watch that and say that was boring. There's no way. There's no way. But that's why you and I love this stuff, because it's infinitely inspiring, interesting, and just wonderful. It makes life just so much better to know that exists. And that, you know what I'm saying? Like that you can become immortalized in an essence in the eyes of somebody else based on something beyond just words.
And that's why I love storytelling. So that's why I have a separate page for my global culture series, so I can tell these people's story.
Yeah.
That we would not even think about, or, you know, would be unusual. Or
well, let's get into VeraNation.com. It only took us 30 minutes to get there. Number one, let's just go through the basics. It's VeraNation.com. Why did you start it? When did you start it? And then where do you plan to go with it? So number one, why?
I've always been a keen writer. I never knew it. And even in elementary school, I have teachers like, you're going to be a writer. I'm like, no, I'm going to be a singer. Or marine biologist. That was the other thing. But
try singing underwater. It's not easy.
Oh, no. I think you can die.
I've tried.
So when MySpace came around, I had some music people on there, and they needed some people to write about reviews.
You're dating yourself. When MySpace came out, back in my day, we had MySpace, and you used HTML, and people had yellow fonts on white backgrounds, and music would automatically play.
It was cool because you get to be really creative with it, like you can't do on Facebook. You know, you make it personal. So anyway, this lady was like, I need writers for this platform based in Vancouver, Canada, and platform based here in New York. And so I just started reviewing albums and interviewing artists through email. And I was like, oh, this is fun. I get paid a little bit. And then after about a couple of years, this lady who I knew, she recommended me to this guy based in London. And it was a trance website, trance music. And he was like, I need a public relations manager. I had no idea what I was doing. I was like, well, I have these connections, and I'm going to interview this artist in Charlotte. He's in that same genre. He's like, go for it. So I worked for them for 3 years, helping them with writing.
So was it like a side job or a full-time job?
It felt like a full-time job because, like, even though it was part-time, I would have to take time off work to go to these shows in Atlanta and Charlotte and Orlando. And it seems glamorous, but you're forking out money left and right.
Right. It's a passion.
You do it because you love it. You know, and you get the experience, and you're like, I know that guy. I remember when he was nothing. Now he's like, you know, and you make memories. And I met so many amazing people who I'm honored to call my friends through music, and who live in different countries, and they know who they are. I love them to death. But then after a while, I noticed there was a trend, and there was some, he started rewording my words, and I'm like, that's not right. I don't appreciate it. But I was also learning to be a better writer too.
Okay.
And so eventually I quit. I was like, let me figure out what I want to do. I don't know if I want to write. And then went back to school, and I met Taylor in one of my classes. And
Taylor Shawinski,
yes.
who was recently on the podcast. Go check out that episode for somebody who is
she's
also,
amazing.
Yes, just an amazing creative mind and somebody who also seeks to connect to people.
Yeah, she called me on the blue one day, and she was like, hey, man, I got this idea for a magazine. And I was like, let's do it. And so I started helping her with 9 to 5, and that has really propelled me to be the writer I am today.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't take my own writing seriously until about 2 years ago. And then I realized I could probably do this for a living. I'm already doing some other technical stuff on the side.
Yeah.
Why not make a platform for my work and what I want to showcase?
Right. So technical writing is something that is listed as a skill for you, but it's probably not something you...
I hate it.
Yeah, well, it's...
But it pays the bills.
Exactly. It's one of the creative... for writers, it's something that you can do and make money writing. Make more money than you would if you were writing for, say, your local newspaper or magazine or anything like that. Those people are going to... Or I should say... blog or news website or whatever, you're not going to get paid a whole lot doing that. You're just not. You're actually, the benefits are probably more of the exposure type, which exposure unfortunately doesn't pay the bills either. Last time I checked, credit, good exposure didn't pay the mortgage.
No, but what's really cool is with the articles, for example, like I take a regular Q&A and I form it into a narrative. So they're not just getting like, oh, here's some publicity.
Yeah.
They can, a lot of them have, they've taken that article and they put it into their own bios so they can use that. So, because I want it to be a story. I want it to be something relatable and not just be like, what's your favorite color? Why'd you get into music? There's always something underneath that.
You go 30 minutes talking about North Korea.
Yeah.
But that's the beauty of having that kind of ability to create that narrative based on the conversation you had and make an interesting story out of it on paper, which is not easy.
It's not, but it didn't hit me how good I was until, here you go back and look at your work and you're like, damn, that's good. But I wrote that. It's incredible. And you're like, I really have this gift. And so I really learned things and learned what works best for me and my signature style.
Mm-hmm.
And I do my best not to ask the same question twice, so I have to do a lot of research with certain artists and make sure that I don't want to say the same thing over again,
Yeah.
And get something else.
Cookie cutter. Yeah. When I started this podcast, I had a list of questions. I sat and pined over like the types of questions that I wanted to ask that could be applied to just about anybody. And you'll hear, if you go back and listen to like the first, maybe, I don't know, 10 episodes, maybe, I don't know. You'll hear every interview I do, there's certain questions just keep coming up and up and up. And then I started to realize, I'm like, that's just, it's not serving anyone. It's nice to have some of those things in the back of your pocket if you have a difficult interview and somebody's not giving you anything, and then you could just pull that out. But for the most part, I find the people I've been talking to, it's not hard to just hit the ground running and start seeing where the conversation goes.
Well, this is also audio. So when I send out questions through email, if I have to do it that way, I just pray that they're of some level of literacy. So when they respond, like I don't have to do a whole lot of work
to make it sound
smart.
Yeah, I get that. It's
for the most part, they're good.
It's hard to be concise on paper. It's very difficult. To write a response and have it effectively mean something, you spend a lot of time to try to make something as short and concise as possible. It takes longer than to just blabber on a microphone and just let it go, let it ride. But yeah, that's definitely, and not everybody has that skill, which is why you're so valuable, because you're one of the things you're marketing yourself as is somebody who can write a press release for creatives? Specifically, I think you're going for musicians or just anybody.
Anybody. I've done some work for friends and
Mhm.
events and stuff like that on the side, but I've done Bad John. I've done, a few other people.
Yeah.
They have just anything.
Anything. So if you got an art show coming up
Mm-hmm.
and if you want to make an impact, you can just throw some shekels at Abby and she's going to make you sound like a professional.
Because, it's hard when you're putting on an event. It's like you have a million little things to do, and then writing's really the last thing on your mind. So
Right.
you have to get those immediate press releases out so you can get that the news out.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it is like, it's the most mundane thing to do is all that technical stuff, but someone's got to do it.
Well, I think we all have day jobs of some sort. Yeah, that, for lack of a better term, day job, things that pay the bills that you have to do. And sometimes you're lucky and you can use that skill like you're doing to do something you love with the same skill. So it's the same skill set that you have that you're sharpening doing this kind of mundane stuff, talking about like what widget does what. And now you can, you know what I'm saying? You can sharpen your skills doing something that you're getting paid to do, so that when somebody turns around and says, "Hey, I've got this event and I need some help getting the word out," and you're able to, because most people don't know how to communicate properly
Or even
on
ask for
paper.
help. And you have to be confident. And that's the other thing that we learn as we do our own business and stuff is being confident and being able to say, like you've touched on before,
Mm-hmm.
I think it was with Taylor, like just charging what you're worth. You know? And then if you're confident enough and, you're going to get some people like, no, I can't. Well, that's fine. But what you're paying for is, like the hours of editing and just having the magic to put it into good use, make that transformation.
Yeah. So in terms of, say, a photographer, if I spend 5 minutes with you to take a picture, you're like, well, how come you're charging me this amount for the 5 minutes? And I'm like, do you understand how much time it took before we got to that point where I could stand in front of you for 5 minutes and capture what needed to be captured? And then afterwards, I still have to do whatever kind of processing needs to be done to the photo, because believe it or not, you don't just take the picture and hand over the file. It doesn't work that way. Especially with professional photography, the cameras don't the photos don't come out of the camera done. You still got to finish them. you got to put the finishing touches on them. But beyond just that, then there's there's all of the other things of running a business. There's paperwork. There's cataloging. There's how you're going to get the photo to them. How you're going to process invoicing. All of the things that that are involved that people don't see on the back end.
Mm-hmm.
They don't understand how that all adds up. And so when a lot of kind of amateur creatives start charging money for what they're doing, they're always undercharging because they're not accounting for how they got to that point.
Yeah. And I was skeptical too. I was like, no one's going to pay for me to interview them. But it's not just an interview. Like, I'm telling your story.
Yeah.
So I made sure to stay away from the Q&A for that very reason alone,
Yeah.
Make it personal. And that way they can use it for whatever they needed to promote themselves.
So do you find yourself reading more now and paying attention to journalism where it is today and writing, like creative writing, or not creative writing, but like the kind of things that you do? I'm not saying that it's not creative. I mean,
No, I know what you mean.
I don't mean like making up stories. I mean like writing about creatives.
I specifically, when I decided to go to college, I did not want to go to college for journalism or creative writing. And it was a hard choice because I knew I was good. I had a lot I needed to work on at that point, obviously. Yeah. But I was so scared that it would make me doubt myself in my writing.
Yeah. Comparison is a thief of joy.
So I just took on side gigs, and that's how I learned. No, I'm not saying like don't go to school for it if that's what you want to do. I mean, I'm sure it's very valuable, and had a lot of English professors really help me. And they're like, you need to be above in this class. You don't need to be in this class. So I'm like, well, I have to take it. It's required. But, but I'm also that kind of person when, especially back then, I had one English professor tell me I couldn't write. And I was like, oh, okay, then you don't get the best of my work. So I didn't hand her the best of my work. So I got a C in the class.
Wow.
But I'm like, you don't get to decide that. You can mentor me, and which is what they're supposed to do. They're like, hey, I really like this here. Let's talk about this. Or you really fell off the platform. What happened? Those types of things. But don't sit there and tell someone they can or cannot do something, because that kind of shuts you down.
Yeah.
And so that's
Words
what
are important too. They might not have meant to say you can't write. Maybe they did. I don't know. It's weird. That's a weird thing to say.
She was nice to me after I took her class, so it was kind of awkward.
My daughter went to college her first semester. She went up to Pratt in New York for creative writing.
Wow.
And one of her teachers told her, not a criticism of her ability, just told her, get the hell out of here. Stop this. Don't do this. You're wasting your money. And it had nothing to do with saying, oh, you're not talented enough for this. It was, this school is a money pit. It costs more than you'll ever make. You'll be paying your student loans back for the rest of your life if you go through a 4-year program here doing creative writing. The chances of you making money doing creative writing are so, like, she gave her this kind of wake up call.
Wow.
Of hey, this is what the life of creative writing. You want to become a teacher, because that's probably the only thing you can do. Now, granted, I don't fully agree with this teacher, but it was pretty interesting because it put enough doubt in her head that she changed majors and moved out, changed her mind completely about what she was doing. She still loves writing. But the fact that she could, where you overcame this negative input from a teacher, and you said, well, I'm going to just do it despite what you're saying. You're not even going to be able to see my best work. My daughter was like, you know what? Maybe she's right. Maybe this isn't for me. And then, I would think that would almost be a litmus test. Like if someone tells you no and you get past that, then then you should definitely be doing it.
If you wake up and you're like, this is what I want to do, or you have some inkling to do it, I really don't think you should force feed that down.
Right.
Even if it's for 15, 20 minutes, do it. You never know what comes out of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, but I like that you overcame the influence of the teacher telling you can't do this. You're like, I'll show you.
I did. I was like, who are you to tell me? And quite frankly, we're the same age, because I didn't start college till I was 25, and so she was 26. She was a new teacher. I mean, and people that really know me, they know me. I'm a little feisty, so I had no problem telling her how I felt.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I mean,
and I don't recommend that, but in the same way, I was like, who are you to tell me what I can and cannot do?
Right.
And it's just like English 102.
I wonder if that's something that professors in that level, in college, do they do that on purpose just to weed out the people? Because,
no,
are they
I think
weeding
she was
out
an exception.
the future competition? What's the point of saying that to somebody?
Well, I've even had professors tell me I don't think you should try that. I think you should do this. And, really good mentors can see that in each student, and they know the ones that just want to glide by. They get that. They're not the ones that are going to focus. But for you to put enough energy into saying, it would be different if I didn't have any care, or I didn't show up to class, or just half-assed it. But, the amount of energy that you put out negatively on that person comes back.
Yeah. Well, do you find you respond well to that kind of negative kind of reinforcement? Or, what I'm saying? What's the word I'm saying? Not reinforcement, but a negative criticism where you're going to overcome that. Does that give you extra drive in your life?
It does now, because I've had to learn, one, I'm not a failure, and two, I am worth something. But, I had to go through my own sets of depression and mode for a good minute for me to get to where I am now. So now I have no problem telling somebody, I'm sorry, I can't work with you. This isn't going to work.
That's fantastic.
But I mean, you're going to get those people. I mean, it's inevitable.
Yeah.
So,
there's always going to be people in your life who doubt you, and
I know the ones who were always with me from the beginning. And I know the people in my life who have always pushed me to even get here. They're like, you should do this and do it. And they're just constantly beating down. Those are the kinds of people you need in your life. So, but the confidence comes over time, and it comes with, nerves of steel at some point, but
overcoming something or moving past that kind of person. Sometimes, I mean, that kind of motivation, when you hear high level performers, just listening to an interview with Michael Phelps, the swimmer, and he's psychotic in his, and it's very similar. His motivations are very similar to Michael Jordan. If you watched any of that Michael Jordan documentary, it's fascinating. You don't have to even like sports. It's a fascinating documentary because he would find an enemy to overcome in every situation. So if Michael Phelps showed up to go swim one day and somebody said anything that could be perceived as a criticism or a negative thing about him or his swimming abilities, he would use that. And so all he could focus on during like that session would be, screw that guy. I'm going to do exact the opposite of what he thinks I'm able to do, and I'm going to show him. And that was every aspect of his life. He's constantly at war, and he's always trying to prove himself. Michael Jordan did the same thing. He was so competitive. It didn't matter what it was in his life, anything he was doing, down to, like, that's why he had such gambling problems, because people would bet him something, and he couldn't not take the bet. He would always have to try to be the best. And so, yeah. Well, I'm wondering if you have a tinge of that.
I have a slight tinge, but that's a little bit more obsessive.
Well, these are the highest level performers. And it's almost, when you hear about it, you almost feel sorry for them, because you're like, oh my gosh, you're trapped in a situation where you could never enjoy the fruits of your labor because you're always picking a fight. You know what I'm saying?
But you also have to be welcoming of failure. As humans, that's what we do. We try and try and try again until we get it right. And even 10 years from now, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. I had a great journey, and I'm content with that. So,
yeah, I mean, sometimes the failure story is very interesting. I mean, I just watched, this is going to sound, I sound like I'm a huge sports fan. I was watching a running event yesterday, and it was an ultra marathon that was.
Well, you are a runner.
But it was broadcast on YouTube, right? And I'm talking like 7 hours of live coverage, because it was a 100K, which is something like 60 something miles, 62. I forget what it is. It's a long distance, and they were trying to break the world record. And the guy who was trying to do it missed it by 11 seconds. He ran for 6 hours straight and missed the world record by 11 seconds. Now, you might think that's just awful. How can that, I mean, the amount of months he spent getting ready for this event and everything that has to have fallen in place, this company that sponsored it, and they set up this whole track for this, and it's just this big production, and then to fail, you think, oh, that's awful. Like, oh, that's so hard. But here's the thing. To me, when he does do it, because I'm sure he will, because he'll come back again and do it, like, it'll be that much better. So the failure, he'll sit there and learn, why did I drop that? Because coming up to the last mile even, he was like a minute and a half ahead. And he just lost it at the end. Like, he ran out of steam. So now he's going to go back and train and figure out what went wrong. And that's the kind of like spirit of overcoming. So yeah, failure to me makes the story so much more interesting, because when he does, they'll talk about how heartbreaking it was for him to miss it by 11 seconds, and now he's come back and crushed it. Or maybe he won't, but still the heartbreak of it all. Boston Red Sox forever were the most interesting, like, losers. And then once they started winning, it's like, whatever. You know what I'm saying? So there's something about failure that makes that is sometimes more interesting than somebody who's just consistently winning.
And I agree with that. So, like, you like competitive running, I like competitive gymnastics.
Yeah.
So when they find the it girl in gymnastics, it's like, she can't lose. She can't lose.
Who's that girl that the video was going around last night with? I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. I was watching it last night in bed. I was like, oh my God.
I don't know.
Oh, I'll have to find it because now I don't know the name. So sorry.
Could be Simone Biles. I have
No,
no
it
idea.
wasn't. It
okay,
wasn't.
It was somebody else.
It was, yeah.
So they'll, if they take one, the margin for error is so small, and I know that sounds cliche, but it is.
Mm-hmm.
And, so when they have a fall or something like that and they miss it or they don't
It could
medal,
just be a hesitation that they get marked on. It's so weird.
They're human.
Yeah.
They're going to be prone to error. I mean, long gone are the days of Nadia Perfect 10. That's gone. They have a whole new system now, and it's all about difficulty and execution and how well you do it.
Mm-hmm.
But to put that level of stress on them to consistently be the number, especially in the United States, they expect you to win the gold. There's no exception. Silver and bronze are not up for debate. So it's kind of, you really have to be a special person to accept yourself before you even get to that world stage.
Yeah.
You can accept the failure, you can move on from it, maybe kick some ass the next day.
Right. But I do love the complete story. The complete story is not interesting without the failures.
Exactly.
Without the yin and the yang. That's life, though.
Mm-hmm.
We need to have,
and it does. It makes the competition exciting because it's like you have to be on your A game all the time.
Yeah.
And that's a mental thing. They don't teach that.
Oh yeah, gymnastics is so weird because it goes against all
yes.
You know what I'm saying? We're not designed to be flying through the air.
But you're doing the impossible. Like
Yeah.
you literally are. And I think that's what I love about it in sports in general. Like you're doing something amazing with your body, like you didn't think you could do, like a human could do.
I feel that way about dance now.
Hmm.
Like because when you take it in passively and you don't understand exactly what kind of sacrifice these people have made, ballerinas are an insane like amount of dedication that starts from when they're like 3.
Mm-hmm.
Like they have to start, it's like babies. If they don't, they'll never make it. And then the shelf life of a ballerina professionally is short. You know what I'm saying?
And they have to love it.
It's all sacrifice, all heart. But the physical aspect, I mean, there's, and the same thing with the gymnastics, the physical aspect, the strength that these people that they have is unbelievable. And yeah, it makes all of my creative endeavors seem so just pale in comparison.
Yeah, but we can't compare ourselves to them.
No.
But it's a good, this is a great way to start my day.
Yeah.
I could see someone doing, there was one gymnast, she's originally from Armenia, but she lives here in the States. She's a doctor. She trained for the Rio Olympics while working 24 hours at a hospital delivering babies, and then she would go and train. She was able to go and compete in the qualifications. She had a skill named after her, and that's all she wanted. She just wanted to go there and compete. That was her dream. She didn't make it to any finals, but she did it. And you could just see, even though it wasn't the best and most sparkling routine, but you can just feel how excited and amazing that she felt, to just humble that she was to be there. And she did the impossible by herself.
Yeah.
And she competed. And then after every, dismount, she would hug the apparatus and I'm just so happy to be here. She would just be happy just being there compared to someone who cries over getting a silver medal,
Yeah.
So it's mentality.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. It's hard to try to wrap your head around having that kind of longevity of a commitment to excellence. I try to, I don't know if there's anything in my life. There's always been periods where I get into something and give it my full attention and go head over heels into it. Podcasting, maybe. but eventually, it matures, it changes, it fades, whatever it is. And to see that what these young athletes, and you can't forget that there's also an artistic side to that as well. Like gymnastics, there's an art to it. Someone has to choreograph that. And a lot of times they'll have a message in there.
Well, even with the men, with men, they don't have music, but they're expressive in their own way.
Yeah.
Yeah. The same with running. You have your own style of running, and there's so many different styles of running. Yeah. Your own rhythm. So.
Yeah. It's definitely a fun thing. So on the creative front with your VeraNation.com, Why the name Vera Nation?
Great question. I don't get that asked enough. I've always liked the name Vera. I thought it was a beautiful name. And
It's your favorite Pink Floyd song.
by the way, I got into electronic music because of Dark Side of the Moon. Just from all the little trinkets and stuff they would add in there. Great album. Vera was just a name, and then Nation kind of just stuck because, I wanted to be a foundation for something. And so just kind of stuck. And then when I was doing some research, I found out there was some kind of video game platform is Vera Nation. So I started taking that hashtag, and now I've surpassed the video people.
Video game platform.
Yeah, so now you'll see mostly music stuff on there instead of...
Suck it, nerds. I'm joking. Anyway. Okay, so what is your vision? Like, where do you see this take? Is it just a vehicle for you to be able to do more writing for people, or do you want to like include other writers eventually?
I do, and I have one who's helping me right now, and it would help to have an extra pair of hands.
Yeah,
can only do so much. But that's the other thing, is trying to find someone that you can work well with. And I'm the way I am now and the way I am at work, and John can back me up on this. I am not.
Just so people know, you work with
Bad John.
With John Stout, who's a photographer here in Charleston, who's very well known amongst the artsy people because he loves to take pictures of people in the creative community
and buildings. He's amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can be a little bit stricter, and I have certain guidelines, and I'm very like, why are you standing in my door? Ask the question. You're wasting time. That's me at the office, and that's how I am with the writers. But what I ask in return is communication weekly, every couple of days, and so it's hard to find people that, especially in the creative world, because you have your own vision, and you're like, no one's going to tell me what to do, what not to do. That's where it kind of butts heads. And at the same time, I want to be accessible to people who actually want to learn to write.
Right.
Too.
It's hard not to be precious about something creative, especially when you're not getting like a whole lot of money for it. You're like, well, why am I doing this if I'm just going to get picked apart? But what you're offering is beyond monetary compensation. You're offering some expertise to people.
And even if they go and do their own thing, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I could be a stepping stone. I couldn't, but either way. And in my will, like I do have someone that will take over in case something happens to me, who I'm very confident in.
You have a will?
Yeah, everybody should have a will.
I mean, I have a will because I have kids and I'm older.
But I'm a global traveler. Like, you never know. So always being prepared.
But that's interesting. I would never think to put like my,
business?
Creative stuff into my will. Like, oh, if I, here's the password to my website, back end. And wow. Yeah. That's something interesting to think about. I've never even thought about that. Because, you always worry about like who's going to take care of the kids and this, that, and the other thing. But now I never really thought about like the creative stuff, like who's going to take ownership of anything you might have created and make sure.
It took me about 6 months to settle on somebody.
Wow. That's very insightful. That's very people listening right now. If you're in the creative business and you're not here tomorrow, who's gonna manage your legacy? And
it has to be someone that can carry their torch. They may tweak it. That's they may do that, but they understand why you do it.
Yeah.
And have always been supportive of it. So that's very important too.
Right. And you've done this website the right way. It's not like you went and created like a free WordPress site.
I did. I started out with
right.
Well, I started out with Blogger, and then I finally hired a team to make it look badass.
Right. Yeah. But what I mean is you're not going to veranation.blogger.com. You're going to veranation.com. You have the domain. You own the product on there, exactly. Despite what code is going on in the background. But yeah, you're not beholden to another company like a Facebook or something. Like people will put all of their creative output onto, say, YouTube or something like that.
I see.
And it's a huge risk. You have all these people making their lives on Instagram, becoming, Instagram influencers, until Instagram decides to pull the rug right out from underneath you and destroy your whole thing. So no one can do that to you because you own it all.
Yeah, and that's part of, as a creative, or even if not as creative, if you want to do like a product business, you really have to really want it and say, this is part of me.
Yeah.
This is representation of me. How am I going to represent that? Well, it's like having the elevator pitch. And I've actually told clients this over the phone, and it's not to sound sarcastic, but, one guy called and he took 20 seconds for him to tell me his name. And I'm like, with all due respect, sir, you just took 20 seconds to tell me your name. If we were in an elevator right now and I asked you what you did, you would have failed. But that's, they don't teach these things. This is something that you learn along the way, and you can't be shy or timid or a little bit hesitant because it shows.
Well, it goes back to what we touched on about earlier. It's easier to like vomit from the mouth all sorts of information. It takes somebody with a little bit of skill and experience to be concise.
And with that, to go back to your question, yes, I do want to have more writers, and I want to keep going with the storytelling is what I enjoy still.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also working on a couple of book series.
Books?
Mm-hmm.
What?
Yeah. So
Breaking news. Hold on.
Well, there's one I've been working on since I was 12, so I want to make that at some point. That's a long-term goal. But right now I've teamed up with an illustrator and another friend to come up with a mental health series for children, but in a way they can understand.
Hold on a second. I want you to expand a little bit on this, because I'm curious as to mental health for children, aimed at the parents. Who's the audience?
The audience will be the kids. So
okay.
So you have like animals, for example, and some of them have slight forms of sadness, so the sign of depression or an eating disorder, in a way that kids can understand. Be like, oh, he keeps eating this, and he's gaining weight, and he feels bad, so that's why he doesn't swim as fast. Like things that I'm hoping that they'll understand, and then in the storyline they figure it out together.
I think it doesn't even have to be geared towards children.
It could be.
You can write it this way for children, but I mean, I think a lot of people through this pandemic have been experiencing some form of anxiety, depression, or a combination of them, and you miss the warning signs. It's easy to miss the warning signs, and you find yourself into like this spiral.
Yes, and so what I've done is just kind of asked some people, especially a couple of friends that work in the psychiatry world, and they're like, well, there's not enough books for kids. Mm-hmm. I'm like, okay, that's great. Sorry, I've never written for kids, but we can try it.
Yeah.
And then I started thinking about, my father is his family's originally from Spain, but most of them live in Colorado. So in those kind of communities, you don't, even in the Japanese community, it's another community I'm in, they don't talk about, mental health issues. They don't talk about their feelings. It's just something they don't do. They may express it in the language or the food or the music, but they don't talk about it.
Right.
So why not, after the English one, why not do a book in Spanish? Why not do a book in Japanese? So for those cultures, they can talk about it.
Yeah. I guess it's probably a lot less taboo now than it used to be to talk openly about depression. And the signs can be so subtle for people. I'm just talking about myself. Like, I've never thought of myself as somebody who was depressive or depressed. But then I started to notice certain signs, lack of motivation for certain things.
I remember like when we had the virtual brunch.
Yeah.
That
was at the beginning.
That was at the beginning, and
of the
you
pandemic.
were so sad, and I felt bad because we're so used to getting out, meeting with people, and having that looked forward to, and so, but now you've started this. So,
Well, I know about myself. I'm a very social person. Like that's how I thrive. Even if I'm just amongst people and not even participating and just listening and just being there, it doesn't matter. I just like being around people and I like experiencing life. So yeah, that was taken away, trying to come up with new ways to fill that hole. Definitely, that's how the whole thing started, for sure. I mean, I've always wanted. I tried to start a podcast like 10 years ago with a friend of mine, and it just didn't. We didn't even make it through episode 1. Just too goofy. But it's something I've always wanted to do. But this was like the perfect excuse to like fill my cup as far as missing.
Well, you did a beautiful job of recovering from that.
Yeah, but I still feel the effects of it.
Sure.
Like I'm in the middle of training for a marathon right now, and it's been the most difficult training block I've ever had. And you would think in this situation, training for a marathon is perfect because it is a very like lonesome solo type of endeavor when you're running for 15, 16, 17 miles on a weekend and then running 5-6 miles every day. Outside of that, there's a lot of time stuck in your own head. And normally where that isn't a good escape or contrast to being a social person, it's a good like reset. When you don't have the social aspect of it, it now becomes a black hole. So
that's
the
one
motivation
way of looking
goes
at
away.
working out.
Well, you know what I'm saying? Like,
But no, I
in a
get it.
healthy balance, it's something to look forward to. It's something that you wake up and you can't wait to get out and run. And now it's like I'm waiting till I'm chasing daylight. Going, if I don't run now, I'm going to be running in the dark. So my runs get later and later in the day, and things like that. My motivation is gone. I'm not looking forward to it as much, and I'm not putting as much effort into it. And these are the signs. There are things that we do in our lives, and I know I'm seriously like least affected out of most people that are dealing with so many problems during this time. But I understand how serious it could be, and recognizing those things, recognizing all those signs of depression, it could easily be missed.
And I really think that depression just kind of stems from all this other stuff, like stress.
Yeah.
So I think with starting with the younger starting and in the parents reading or whoever, I think that might be able to catch on. Some empathy might be there.
Right.
They could spot those signs.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just understanding, and understanding it doesn't have to be a permanent. Like there's treatment. There are ways to, but without knowing, how are you going to treat something if you don't know you're even suffering? Because it happens so, it's just like a ninja, just sneaks in there, undetected.
It does.
Starts just doing some damage without you even knowing. Next thing you know, you get like the 5-finger death punch and you're out on the floor.
Yeah.
There's me solving the mysteries of depression right there. It's just to understand kung fu movies.
Everyone has their own method.
Are you saying mine is not clinically approved?
I'm not a doctor.
Hey, you got a microphone on you. You can do whatever you want. Well, I love that this is all stuff that you are using the powers of creativity to tackle. And you have so many of these passions I had no idea about. And now I feel like you're that much more of an amazing person for sharing all of that.
Oh, thank you.
Is there anything else I need to know about? Do you have like an extra limb that you're hiding underneath your shirt that just comes out and like you're like an amazing guitar player because you have 3 hands?
No, I tried learning guitar, and my really good friend, Kevin Church, was teaching me for a while. So shout out to that guy if you guys want to learn. He's amazing. But with my schedule, it's been really hard, and I love listening to music. I spend 10 hours a day listening to music. It doesn't get old for me, but sitting down playing the guitar, it's like I don't find the same amount of passion as I would just listening and finding things in my ear rather than trying to figure it out myself with my hands, if that makes sense.
Well, and it sounds like from knowing you and talking to you, that doing it partially wouldn't suffice. Like you'd want to go all in. And yeah, musical instruments are definitely.
Yeah, and I feel bad because he retuned my guitar, gave me new strings, and we're ready to go. And it just, you know, and I love it and I admire it, and it's in my bedroom, and I'll pluck it every now and then, but it doesn't. It's not part of my musical routine.
You're not thinking about it all day long.
Exactly.
Yeah, and you have to, unless, of course, you're Presley Randall from Baby Yaga, where she basically sees something and immediately is able to do it.
I know.
Girl's amazing.
I had a friend, Josh Burrow. We did an EP together and like years ago, and I was so nervous about singing. So he ran across the street to his house, got some booze, and I had it in the booth with me. And he could just pick up a melody, pick up the guitar, and do it. It was just incredible.
Yeah, people like that are, but you know, I would have to imagine, especially in the music world, it's easier to jump from one instrument to another when you have that knowledge and that understanding of music theory, how it works, all that stuff. But then you have somebody who just has a natural ability to understand and do it enough to get by and be effective.
Yeah,
those people are just alien to me, and that's why I'm fascinated by Baby Yaga, because I mean, if you listen to that EP, it's really good. And then when you find out she had only been playing guitar for like a year before that, you're like, okay,
it is amazing. Yeah,
it's like, okay, whatever you say, kid. You sure you're telling me the truth? But then, yeah, same thing with photography. She's getting all into photography now, and she's using her like iPhone, whatever.
I will say the iPhone does a really good job. I don't know about on the other. I'm not seeing it.
I don't even know if she has. I'm saying iPhone. I think she has an iPhone. I don't know. She just has a phone.
But every now and then I'll look at my photos. I'm like, that's pretty good quality.
Oh yeah. No, well, because the talent has nothing to do with the. I mean, there's a certain ability that a fancy camera is going to give you that you can't do with your phone and whatnot. But to do what she's trying to do, that's all she needs.
Yeah,
she's able to be effective with the tools she has. Yeah, something wonderful about that. About people who also aren't crippled by technology, because you can do. Does that exist in writing though? Is there a thing like, I know with photography, gear is such a crippling factor for so many people, because they feel like, if I don't get this lens, I can't do that thing and I can't be the best photographer because I don't have that, $2,500 lens. Mm-hmm. Whereas in writing, it's like, you can type on anything.
You can, but there's this wonderful platform that I use because I'm a terrible speller. Grammarly.com. That's what I use. So it catches those little things, and then, especially the thesaurus and the dictionary are my two best friends. So that's Grammarly has that all in one. I may not agree with everything they suggest, but it helps make it a little bit more concise. But really, the 90% of the writing comes from you.
Yeah.
So
it's your thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's that, even guitar playing, you might get hung up and be like, I have this crappy old guitar. And you start, when you get that gear acquisition syndrome and you start obsessing over like, well, if I had this guitar, I could do this. Like, no, dude, you could do it with the piece of crap guitar that you have. You know what I'm saying? Same thing with photography, same thing with just about any thing. But writing is one of those that I don't think there's any, like, maybe back in the day, getting an expensive typewriter or a word processor before they were,
I miss my typewriter. Pockets. I miss the sound. I miss the feel. But I'm so used to the computer that if I make a mistake, like, I would just get irate.
Oh yeah, no, on a typewriter now you go crazy. Yeah, you gotta get the whiteout out
and lug it around.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I was in Brooklyn a few years ago, and I just remember walking past this guy sitting outside of a coffee shop, sitting at the table with his analog typewriter, and he looked like a cartoon of hipster, just a hipster. Like, you're in Brooklyn, you've got facial hair, you've got an ironic sweater, and you're typing on a.
I don't know what says New York City anymore.
Yeah, and it was pretty. I was just kind of like, all right, I guess you got to have it there. You got to be that guy. But yeah, that's definitely It's just like, well, you're our friend John, your coworker, shooting film. There's no net. It's completely.
He's an influence now, by the way.
An influence?
He's an influencer now.
Oh, did he get a blue check or something on Twitter?
No, he does those little. We're doing really well. Those little like
reels
and making them fun. But with him, he goes out. He just goes. He'll get off work and just go find something and shoot it. And I'm the same with my writing. I'll if I get a moment in time, I'll find something. And for me, some of the inspiration beyond the 10 hours of music, there's a few books, and there's always that one story every now and then, like once a year, I'll kind of pick up on and be like, oh, and it just keeps that momentum going.
Yeah.
And people are going to hate me for this, but they know I'm a huge fan of Hamilton. I wouldn't say fanatic.
Okay.
I would say an acute inspirer. Because if you ever watched it, or
I watched it on the Disney Plus. I didn't get to see it live.
Gosh. Okay. Well, no, I don't think we could afford to.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But it was an extremely well done, like to try to translate that experience. I hate trying to translate that because when you're watching a play like that, you get to choose where your focus is, even though they're trying to direct you. I think I had the same conversation with Amanda, who was on the show, about dance. When you see it live, you might start looking at something that's going on in the background.
Yes.
You might start seeing some of the other things going on and taking that in. That's part of the experience. When it's directed for screen, you don't get those choices as much.
Yeah, and so the 3 times I've seen it, I've always picked up something else.
Yeah.
And you realize it transcends with the story. And but what the most amazing...
Which you probably need to watch it 3 times to get the story.
Yeah, exactly. And then I was nervous because I'm like, is this going to be a rap musical? Like, am I going to understand the words? But it was beautifully well spoken and almost like poetry. But as a writer, I was very, very in touch with that story because he's always like, you're writing like you're running out of time. And like, that's something I can relate to. Constantly.
There was a sense of urgency about it.
Yes. And that inspired me to read the book, Hamilton. I usually try to either watch the movie and then see if I like it or vice versa. But the fact that man read that book over the summer, came up with a musical out of it on his honeymoon is just beyond me.
Yeah. Well, and it, for all intents, first time I heard anything from Hamilton was somebody was playing the soundtrack, and I was turned off by it. I was turned off by the soundtrack.
I listen to it every day.
Yeah. And I think, did you hear the soundtrack before?
No, because I was nervous. I wouldn't understand it.
Yeah.
Because usually with musicals, now this is a true definition of Hamilton is a true definition of music because there's only 10 minutes left off between the soundtrack and the actual musical. So you're getting the whole musical in the soundtrack.
Right.
So there's not very little dialogue. So A+ on that. But I wanted to watch it before I listened to it because I understood the story. I could see it.
Right. Well, you take the music out of context. To me, I was put off a little bit. I was just like, this sounds like bad, like late 80s, early 90s rap where it was like commercialized rap trying to tell a story instead of like coming from, you know what I'm saying?
But if you don't know the history either, you're not understanding the jokes and the...
Exactly.
Yeah.
None of it hit for where I was, and I probably wasn't in the right mindset to hear it. I wasn't prepared. I was just like, someone's like playing it. I'm like, what the hell is this garbage? Oh, this is the Hamilton soundtrack. Oh, God, this is terrible. Why does everyone like this so much? And then when I watched it, I understood. Like, you have to experience... Yeah, you have to see the whole picture.
And according to Spotify, that was my 3rd most played album of the year.
Only number 3?
I'm sure it'll be number 2 after this year.
But now I can understand and see it. Yeah, it was a lot to take in too. It was information overload to the point where it was tiring, and when it gets to the intermission, you were like, wait, it's not done.
Yes. And the intermissions were like a minute.
Well, yeah, but I mean, on the you could pause it on the TV.
That's true.
And you can rewind it if you didn't catch a word because there's so much that goes right over your head.
Yeah.
Because it is fast. It does. I'm also someone who experiences music as a whole, and I don't pick out the lyrics a lot of times. There's songs that I've known my whole life that I don't know the words to.
Same here.
And I just know the melody, and I certain phrases stick out to me, but sometimes if you ever had a song that you've known your whole life and then you read the lyrics and you're like, oh, I didn't know they were saying that. Yeah.
Yes. All the time. That's why I love those parody videos about like, they'll take certain clippets like Panama by Van Halen. Pat a bra. Yeah. That's what it sounds like.
My favorite was a kid, this girl in high school that was a friend of mine who thought that the Ramones song, I Want to Be Sedated, even though the name of the song is I Want to Be Sedated, she thought they were saying, I want a piece of cake. I'm like, the name of the song is I Want to Be Sedated. How did you mess that one up?
Maybe she had so much cake she was sedated.
She was quite skinny. I think she just was hungry. But it's all true too. But well, I don't know if she was hungry. But anyway,
we skidded up there.
I can just stick my foot in my mouth at any given time. Don't worry, I'll say something stupid. All right, so I'm very excited that we got to sit here and talk about all this stuff.
Thank you for having me. I was so nervous because I was like, I don't know anything about photography, but it's not about that.
No, we'll just talk about whatever. I mean, however the conversation goes. Next thing you know, you're talking about having a piece of cake in high school. Well, this has been awesome. People can find you. You have multiple Instagram handles, which as we were chatting, I was like, I'm following the Vera Nation one, but not even you personally. And as we're chatting, I was like, I don't follow you on. I'm terrible at Instagram, like following people back because I just don't think about it. I suck at social media in general. So.
Well, it's a trait I have to learn because of the business, Yeah. It comes with it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's a necessary evil and I'm terrible at it. Mm-hmm. I break all the rules. My Instagram feed as somebody who is creative is so scattered. Like nothing is consistent. You know how you ever look at somebody's Instagram feed and they'll have a consistency to it? Especially creatives like artists and photographers.
Mine's not actually consistent. It's just kind of when I can post it. And I'll post the older ones after a while to keep some flow in there while I'm working on the newer stuff.
Yeah. And
then I have a friend, she travels a lot. So she doesn't post her stuff right away. She waits till she gets back or goes on another trip to post the stuff before.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. She'll make it last.
Yeah.
So spread it out. Spread it out. I'm of the moment guy. Here's what I'm working on today. And tomorrow to be something completely different. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, but and to me, that should be like the true nature of those things, but they've morphed into something, we always like to come up with rules and analytics about the best way to do things. So from an analytics standpoint, where should people find you, Miss Abby Duran?
Well, veranation.com. You can go on Instagram. My personal is Veranation Girl, but you can also follow the website one, which is vera.nation. And go on there. There is a Twitter, Vera Nation Girl, on there as well, but it's not as active. Most people would just want to rant on Twitter, but it's there if you want to find out what the new music's coming out every Friday. I post that on Twitter a lot, so here's some music to check out. It's on there. So yeah.
And if you want to contribute to Vera Nation, they should send you and expect to be criticized in a loving and concise way. I'm just joking, by the way.
And they will be met with a handwritten letter. Yes.
They will be told you should not write. And then 5 years from then, you will become the greatest writer in the world. No. Well, this has been fun. We're actually going to take some pictures now.
Yes, let's do it.
Let's take some pictures. All right, everybody. Have a great rest of your week. Before you get going, don't forget to subscribe to the show if you haven't already. And also, you can check out more at jwnpod.com or follow me on Instagram at JoeLatex. That's at JOEL, the number 8X. Have a great day. Peace.